Hi, I'm Dale Helgevold, and I'm doing a technical presentation, and the topic is setting up a junior dragster. What I want to do is give the audience an overview of how to set up a junior dragster for racing on the drag strip, basically discussing different ways to change the elapsed time and the speed on the car. What I'm going to do is discuss the different things, and by paying close attention to setting the junior up for different applications on different tracks. When you watch drag racing on television, do you ever think about what all goes into making the cars go down the track? Not to mention how to make them run fast and basically get the most out of the car. Like I said, my name's Dale Helgevold. I've been involved with drag racing for pretty close to 10 years now. The experience I've got is my son used to race a junior dragster for 6 to 7 years. In the time that he raced, we went through 3 different race cars with totally different motors and clutches on each one, so the setup was a lot different from car to car. Other experience I have is I've had the opportunity to work on an alcohol funny car, which is totally different than a junior dragster, but it's all in the same principles as far as elapsed time and speeds with the cars. A lot of the adjustments are made through trial and error and just research on how to make the adjustments and where to make the adjustments at on the car by getting the car to react in certain ways. To prepare this speech, I talked with other parents that have been in the racing of the junior dragsters and that do the tuning for the cars, as well as some research from companies that I used to get parts from. Today I'm going to discuss 3 different ways to make speed and elapsed time adjustments. Another term for elapsed time is ET, which I'll refer to that. Basically, I'm going to begin with discussing engine adjustments. Then I will discuss making clutch adjustments, and finally I'll talk about sprocket adjustments. During the first part, with the engine adjustments, they can be made in many different ways. Fuel delivery is the easiest way to adjust to make the car, if you need to slow it down or make it go faster. If you put an intake restrictor on the car, what that does, it will not allow as much fuel to get from the carburetor. Therefore, it's not burning as much fuel, so like I say, it reduces the fuel flow. McCuney and Tillotson carburetors are the common carburetors used on these cars, so there are intake restrictors that can be put in place to reduce the fuel flow. Exhaust restrictors can be used, and what those do, it's a little plate that goes between the engine block and the header pipe that reduces the amount of pressure going through the exhaust. It increases head pressure, but then slows the car down because it's not shooting everything out of the exhaust pipe. And just smaller sized tailpipes in general will reduce the speed as well, because you're not getting the full performance out of the motor. An installation of what is called a rev limiter can be beneficial. What that does is it keeps the motor from being ran at too high of an RPM, which the big point of that is it extends the life of the motor, because these motors can be revved at 10,000 RPMs. If you keep it down to 8,500, you're going to increase the life of the motor. And something similar to a rev limiter is called a throttle stop. Those are used to set the throttle so it will only open up to a certain amount. Therefore, you're adjusting and limiting the RPMs that the motor will put out as well. And the adjustments on those are usually made on the carburetor. Carburetor jet adjustments also control the fuel delivery. They've got different sizes on the jets. A smaller number, it corresponds to the size of the hole in the jet. So a smaller number will be a smaller jet, therefore less fuel gets in. A larger jet allows more through, therefore it's a larger number. And with these motors, the more fuel that gets through, the cooler the motor runs, and the faster it's going to run. Because these are running on alcohol, you want to keep them as cool as possible. Clutch adjustments can be made. There are three main types of clutches that are used. In the novice class, they run with Salisbury clutches. The next step up would be Comet clutches, and then the experienced class usually uses a Shockwave type clutch, which Shockwave was developed by JR Race Car, and a lot of people developed their clutches around JR's development. Some different ways you can make adjustments on there is you can change the ramps for the rollers on the clutches. The more aggressive of a ramp that you have will wind the motor up quicker, and the less aggressive of a ramp it'll take a little more time to wind the motor up. You can also change the springs in the clutches. If you want to make a gross adjustment or a large adjustment on the clutches, you can change your springs. But if you're looking to do some finer adjustments, the spring placement is what you'll look at. As far as changing the springs, if you use a stiffer spring, it's going to take more force to move it. If you use a lighter spring, it's going to take a little less force. And with the spring placement, they're going to be similar adjustments to the stiffer and lighter springs, but you can make more of a minor adjustment than the large ET adjustments with the spring changes. Lastly, we'll talk about sprocket adjustments that can be made on either the rear axle or on the jack shaft. The rear axle sprockets has their sprockets ranging from 54 tooth count up to a 78 tooth count, and a lot of those are a two-piece sprocket, or a two-piece sprocket that makes it for a quick change. If you need to change them in the pits, you just have to slide your motor assembly up a little bit to get your chain off. You have 6 bolts that'll hold it together. You can slap a new one in fairly quickly. The other sprocket we'll talk about is a jack shaft sprocket, and those range from a 9 tooth to a 16 tooth. And those take a little more time to change because you have to take your rear axle out, as well as disassemble the motor plate to change the sprocket on the jack shaft. Gear ratio is something else with the made with your sprocket adjustments. And what you do is you take the number of teeth on your larger sprocket divided by the number of teeth on your smaller sprocket. That'll give you the gear ratio that you're going to be running with. The lower the gear ratio is, the slower off the line you're going to be, which will give you a better top end. So in essence, you're going to have a worse reaction time off of the starting line. You're going to have, with that, you'll have a slower lapse time, but you're going to have a faster speed at the top end. If you want a slower speed but a quicker elapsed time, you're going to want to have a higher gear ratio, which gets you quicker off the line, and it tops out sooner, so you're cruising through the speed traps at the end of the track. Basically, I've just discussed a few ways in general to make speed and elapsed time adjustments on a junior dragster. We went through a few engine adjustments, some clutch adjustments, and also some sprocket changes or adjustments that can be made. So the next time you're watching drag racing, you might look at it a little differently, since you have a little bit more knowledge now of what makes the cars go and some of the different ways to make some adjustments.